The rain came down in sheets 10 years ago, and the highway was a black mirror reflecting the lights of my rig. I remember the feel of the wheel in my hands, the familiar vibration of the engine, a steady presence beneath my feet. I was 28 years old, and my world was as solid as the load of steel I was hauling south. My wife's voice was still in my ear from a call an hour before, talking about our daughter's first loose tooth, so my life was good and it was simple. A car appeared out of the spray, a small sedan moving too fast for the conditions, and it spun across the median directly into my path. There was no time to think, only to react, so I stomped the brake and twisted the wheel hard, feeling the trailer start to jackknife behind me. The sound was a horrible shriek of metal and a final deep crunch that ended everything. I sat in a cold room for hours after that, the smell of stale coffee thick in the air. My work jacket felt heavy on my shoulders, and the calluses on my hands seemed useless. The police asked the same questions over and over, and I gave them the same answers. It was an accident, a terrible one, but it was just an accident. Then a man in a suit I had never seen before walked in and handed a folder to the detective. The detective opened it and his face changed. They told me they found something in my cab, a bag I had never seen before, and they said my story was a lie. They put handcuffs on my wrists, the cold metal biting into my skin, and they led me away. As they pushed me into the back of a police car, I saw my rig being hooked to a tow truck, its front end crumpled like a discarded can. In the shadows near the wreck, a man I now know as Corbus watched it all, his face illuminated for a moment by the blue glow of his phone as he sent a message. Across the city, Victor Orbis read that text, and a small, cold smile touched his lips before he stepped up to a podium to tell the world how he would get tough on criminals like me. A decade later, I sat in a dark room where the only light came from a laptop screen. The reflection showed a man in a tailored suit, his face calm and unreadable. I was this man now. The politician who was my client's rival was finished, and his career was a smoking ruin because of a scandal I had built for him. It had nothing to do with him directly, which was the point, but it involved his brother and an unfortunate series of financial transactions that I made sure came to light at the worst possible time. He never saw it coming. I closed the final file and shut down the secure connection. My work was clean, precise, and untraceable. A soft chime sounded from the speaker. It was a new message on the Undercroft, the encrypted platform where I sold my services. I opened the message. It was from my handler, just a client request without any details. The message contained only a name and a photograph of a smiling, confident man, Victor Orbis. My success had made me a legend in the gray market of information, so every desperate campaign and corporation wanted the fixer known as Rico Soul. My handler's voice came through the encrypted line, professional and direct. "He's the biggest fish yet, Rico. You sure you want this one? I'll take the meeting." There was a pause on the line, a moment of digital silence. "All right. All those years you spent in the prison library studying information systems instead of lifting weights are about to pay off. But to trap a monster, you can't just hunt it. You have to become its favorite meal." The line went dead. I closed the communication window and pulled up the official campaign website for Victor Orbis. The page was slick and professional, filled with images of Victor shaking hands with factory workers and smiling at children. I clicked on the staff page, my eyes scanning the names and faces of his inner circle. My blood ran cold when I saw the campaign manager. Her name was Clara Ibos. I had never seen her face before, but I knew her work. Her digital footprint was a masterclass in narrative control and ruthless efficiency. She was brilliant, and she was the gatekeeper. Victor Orbis was running for governor, and his campaign needed to project strength above all else. I watched Clara Ibos handle a press conference on a live newsfeed. She took a poll that showed Victor's numbers slipping, and she spun it into a story about resilience, a candidate unafraid of a tough fight. She was masterful. Later, I saw internal surveillance footage that my contacts provided. A junior staffer, a loyal kid who had been with Victor for years, made a small scheduling error. Claire fired him in the middle of the open plan office. her voice calm and level, making an example of him for everyone to see. She reinforced the rule that loyalty is a transaction, and his value had just expired. After it was done, I watched her walk to her car in the parking garage. She got in and sat for a long moment, her hands resting on the steering wheel. I could see them tremble slightly before she gripped the wheel tight, a flicker of something that looked like self-loathing in her eyes. My own hands were steady as I watched the screen. My phone buzzed on the table. It was a news alert, the headline stark against the white background. Orbis CA campaign, rocked by financial scandal, whistleblower to testify. The game had just moved faster than I expected. The financial scandal was real, and the damage was spreading like a fire. The opponent's attack ad was brutal and effective because it was true. Clara's usual methods of damage control were failing. The story was too big, too simple for her to spin. 2 days later, my handler called. They were desperate, and Clara herself had convinced Victor that they needed a weapon they could not control, a specialist from the outside. The contract was negotiated through 3 layers of shell corporations and signed with a digital key. I was in. Clara met me in the lobby of the skyscraper that housed their headquarters. "You're meeting him now," she said, her voice all business. She led me through the war room. It was a controlled chaos of ringing phones and young staffers staring intently at glowing screens. She stopped at a heavy oak door at the far end of the office. She opened it for me, and I stepped inside. Victor Orbis stood by a large window overlooking the city, his back to me. He turned around, a confident smile already on his face, ready to greet the man who was here to save him. For the first time in 10 years, I was in the same room with the man who had stolen my life. The rage was a physical thing, a hot surge that started in my gut and rose into my throat. He was older, his hair gray at the temples, but his eyes were the same. They were the eyes of a man who saw other people only as tools or obstacles. He started talking, his voice the same confident baritone I had heard on the news for a decade, and I could barely hear the words. I felt the muscles in my jaw tighten, my hands clenching into fists at my sides. I needed to get out of the room before I did something that would undo 10 years of planning. "Excuse me," I said, my voice tight. "I need a moment." I turned and walked out, leaving them both staring after me. I found an empty hallway and leaned against the wall, my heart pounding against my ribs. I pulled a worn, creased photograph from the inside pocket of my jacket. It was of my wife and daughter, taken at a park a lifetime ago. They were smiling. After the conviction, my wife tried to hold on, but the shame and the long years were too much. She took our daughter and disappeared, building a new life where I was not a part of the story. Staring at their faces, I knew that walking away now meant Victor had truly won. He would have taken everything and paid no price. I took a slow, deep breath, and I pushed the burning hatred of Louis Vuitton down into a cold, dark place inside me. I folded the picture and put it away. When I walked back into the war room, my face was a mask of calm control. I was Rico's soul again. "I know how to kill the story," I said to Victor and Clara. "But you're not going to like it." The opponent's star witness was a man named a great deal of credibility, and his televised deposition was scheduled for the next day. It would be the end of Victor's career. I did not attack the story, and I did not go after the opponent. I used my resources to tear the witness's life apart. It took me 6 hours to find what I was looking for. He had a gambling addiction he had kept hidden for years, and he owed a great deal of money to offshore bookies. I packaged the information, including account numbers and transaction records. Then I leaked it anonymously to a blogger who was always hungry for a scandal. By morning, the story was everywhere. The witness's credibility was gone, replaced by headlines about his secret debts and shady connections. The financial scandal evaporated, lost in the noise of a more personal and sordid story. Victor was saved. That night, I sat in my sterile apartment. The city lights spread out below me like a blanket of jewels. I plugged a micro drive into my laptop. The access Clara had given me to the campaign's internal network was my real payment. I initiated a deep data scrape of their entire server, a quiet theft of every file and every email they had. As the lines of code scrolled down my screen, the files streaming to my own secure storage, a single folder name in the directory caught my eye. Vuso ACC, Ident Archive, restricted. The campaign headquarters was quiet after midnight, just the low electronic sound of the city breathing through the glass walls. We were the only two left, Clara and I, surrounded by dark monitors and empty chairs. A crisis had hit late, a junior staffer mixing up the schedules for a major town hall, making Victor look unprepared. Clara had the kids' termination papers ready on her tablet. She was clinical, efficient, her face hard in the glow of the screen. I watched her for a moment before I spoke. "Don't fire him." She looked up, her focus shifting from the tablet to me. "He was incompetent, Rico. It was a simple task." "So use it," I said, leaning against the edge of a desk. "Don't fix the mistake. Embrace it. The narrative isn't that we're disorganized. The narrative is that Victor is so committed to the people he overbooked himself. He was trying to be in two places at once because he can't stand to let anyone down." I walked her through it, how to brief the press, how to prep Victor to look apologetic but resolute. I laid out a sequence that turned a staffer's gaffe into a story about Victor's profound dedication. She listened without interruption, her eyes following me as I paced. The hard set of her jaw softened. When I finished, the silence returned, deeper this time. She looked at me across the vast, quiet room, a dangerous intensity in her gaze. "Who are you, Rico?" Her voice was low, and it carried in the stillness. Before I could build a lie she might believe, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out. An alert from the data scraping program I had running in the background. It was a log entry from the campaign's deep server archives. ACCESS denied. Vuso accident archive. File deleted. User Corbus. The date stamp was from 10 years ago, just weeks after my sentencing. My value to Victor became absolute. He saw me as a tool that never failed, a key for any lock. He tasked me with clearing his path to the governor's mansion, and I did. I orchestrated a fake protest outside his opponent's fundraiser, paying men from the 18th Street Union Hall to hold signs. The media filmed Victor wading into the crowd, promising to listen, looking like a peacemaker. I dug up a rival campaign manager's gambling debts and fed the information to a friendly blogger, getting the man fired and his entire strategy discredited. I found a journalist with a sick kid and an insurance company that wouldn't pay. And in exchange for a glowing profile on Victor, I made his problems go away. With every fix, Victor trusted me more. He gave me higher security clearance, unrestricted access. Each night I copied files, downloaded call logs, and planted audio recorders in his office, building my own archive while I searched for a ghost. After the story about the journalist ran on the front page, Victor was ecstatic. He called me into his private office, the one with the dark wood panels and the sweeping view of the city. He poured 2 glasses of scotch from a heavy crystal decanter. "You're a miracle worker, Rico," he said, handing me a glass. "You remind me of my first guy, Corbus, a real artist." He sat in his leather chair, swirling the amber liquid. He leaned forward, his voice dropping into a conspiratorial whisper that barely carried across the desk. "He's the one who handled the original sin that got me started. The truck driver." I kept my face perfectly still. I took a slow sip of the scotch. The electronic records were gone, but a man named Corbus was not. Yet, he was nowhere. I found no credit history, no property records, no digital footprint at all. He had vanished. I called my handler on a secure line, explaining that my search had hit a solid wall. "A guy like Corbus doesn't retire," the voice on the other end said, calm and direct. "He disappears. And a man like that never deletes his insurance policy." The handler gave me a name, a shell corporation Corbus sometimes used for untraceable income. It was a slim lead, but it was enough. The campaign's annual fundraising gala was the perfect stage. It was held in a massive ballroom, filled with the city's elite. I moved through the crowd, a shadow in a tailored suit, until I found him. Corbus was older, smaller than I expected, with the tired eyes of a man who sleeps lightly. He was standing near a service exit, trying to remain invisible. I engineered the approach, guiding one of Victor's most vocal political rivals into Corbus's path, making it look like a clandestine meeting. I made sure Victor saw it from across the room, his hand tightening around his wife's arm. I saw the flash of narcissistic rage in his eyes, the quick, violent paranoia. His gaze swept the ballroom until it locked on mine. He jerked his head toward the exit, a silent command. The trap was sprung. Now I just had to survive it. Victor's order was simple. Handle Corbus. He didn't say kill him, but the meaning was clear in his cold, steady stare. I found Corbus in a small, messy apartment in a part of the city Victor only ever flew over. He was terrified, his hand shaking as he let me in. The place smelled of stale fear. Instead of a weapon, I pulled out my phone. I played him the recording from Victor's office, the one where Victor, giddy with success, had reminisced about the truck driver. Then I played him the new one, the quiet, chilling order to have him removed. I offered him a trade. He thinks you're a liability, I said. This recording makes you a threat. He'll never be sure you don't have a copy. I slid the phone across his dusty table. Give me the original evidence from the frame-up, the physical files. You take this recording. It's your new insurance policy. He stared at the phone, then at me. He nodded slowly and walked to a closet, pulling out a loose floorboard. He handed me a small, heavy hard drive. I had it. The kill shot. 10 years of my life, 10 years of obsession, were resting in the palm of my hand. I walked out of the building and back to my car, the weight of the drive feeling immense in my pocket. My encrypted phone buzzed. It was a text from an anonymous source inside the campaign. The message was a single image, a screenshot of a computer screen showing a newly authorized background check on the name Rico Sol. At the bottom of the form, the requesting authority was listed clearly, Clara Ebos. She was waiting for me in my apartment. She must have gotten the master key from building security. The way she stood in the middle of the room, she looked like she owned the place, like she was there to foreclose on me. She didn't ask a question. She made a statement. Your name is Louis Vusso. The name hit me harder than any physical blow. The Rico Sol persona, the armor I had spent a decade building, simply dissolved. I didn't deny it. I walked to the wet bar, pulled out the hard drive, and set it on the polished stone surface. I told her everything. I told her about the accident, the frame-up, the 10 years I spent in a concrete box learning how the world really worked. I explained the plan, my long, slow infiltration of Victor's life. I showed her the proof on the drive, the original police reports, the fabricated evidence, the audio of a younger Victor Orbis giving the order to bury the trucker. Her face crumbled as the truth settled over her. Her career, her ideals, her entire belief in the man she had helped build, all of it was a lie built on the wreckage of my life. Her eyes filled with a horrified clarity. You're a monster, she whispered, her voice breaking. You're just like him. She turned and ran out of the apartment, slamming the door behind her. I was left alone in the quiet, the hard drive sitting on the counter. She was gone. I stood there for a long time, staring at the small black rectangle that held my entire past and my only future. The victory I had chased for a decade felt like poison. I had the power to destroy Victor Orbis, to burn his world to the ground, but I had lost the only person who had seen the man I used to be. I held the object of my obsession, and it felt worthless, a cold piece of plastic and metal. I had become a monster to hunt a monster, and I wasn't sure there was any difference between us anymore. My phone rang, cutting through the silence. It was my handler from the Undercroft. His voice was no longer calm. It was urgent, sharp. Rico, get out now. The network is buzzing. Orbis just put a kill order out. Not on you, on Clara. The phone went dead in my hand. I dropped it on the counter next to the hard drive, my mind racing faster than my heart. The plan for revenge, the decade of careful construction, it all felt like a child's game next to the simple, brutal fact of a kill order. I grabbed my keys and my weapon, then hesitated and picked up the hard drive too. I called Clara's number as I ran for the door. She answered on the third ring, her voice thick with exhaustion and anger. What do you want? "Don't talk," I said, my own voice low and urgent as I took the stairs two at a time. "Just listen. He knows. He knows. You know, and he's going to kill you. I need you to meet me." I gave her the address for a multi-level parking garage 5 blocks from her building. It was a place I knew, a concrete maze with poor lighting and multiple exits. She was silent for a long moment before she spoke again, her tone flat and devoid of any emotion. 10 minutes. I got there first and parked in the darkest corner of the 3rd level, killing the engine and the lights. The air was cool and smelled of damp concrete and old exhaust fumes. Weak fluorescent lamps cast long, deep shadows between the rows of cars. I watched the entrance ramp until her car appeared, its headlights cutting through the gloom. She parked 2 spaces away and got out, walking toward me with a strange calmness. She wore a dark dress, and her face was a pale mask in the poor light. She stopped a few feet from my car. "Victor doesn't leave things to chance," I started, keeping my voice down. "He's not going to send a man with a gun. He's going to make it a public spectacle. He's staging an assassination attempt on you at the election night rally. His own security will stop it at the last second. He'll look like a hero, and you will understand the kind of leverage he has over your life." She just stared at me, her intelligent eyes searching my face. The idealistic woman who believed in a greater good was gone completely, replaced by someone cold and resolute. The brilliant strategist I had seen manage press conferences was clicking back into place, processing the new data, calculating the new odds. Her expression hardened. "Then we're not just going to expose him," she said, her voice clear and sharp in the quiet garage. "We're going to burn his entire world to the ground on live television." Election night was a storm of noise and light. The hotel ballroom was packed with Victor's supporters, a cheering, chanting sea of people under the glare of television cameras. Dozens of massive screens lined the walls, flashing poll numbers and pundit analysis. I moved through the crowd, my suit feeling tight across my shoulders, the hard drive a solid weight in my inside pocket. Clara was already where she needed to be, at a broadcast control terminal backstage, her campaign manager credentials giving her access to everything. She looked up as I passed, gave a single, almost imperceptible nod, then turned back to the screen, her fingers moving quickly over the console as she established a secure data channel to every major news network in the city. My target was the green room, the quiet space behind the main stage where Victor was waiting to give his victory speech. I found him surrounded by his senior aides, a confident smile on his handsome face as he watched the returns come in. He saw me and waved me over. "Rico, my man," he boomed, clapping me on the back. "Perfect timing. I need a word with you. Alone." He dismissed his staff and led me into the smaller, soundproofed room. A television on the wall showed the feed from the ballroom. The noise of the party was gone, replaced by a heavy silence. He poured himself a drink, his movements relaxed and triumphant. He was a man who believed he had already won. I let the silence stretch for a beat before I spoke. "My name is Louis Vusso." He froze, the glass halfway to his lips. He turned slowly, the smile vanishing from his face. His eyes narrowed, searching for the punchline, for the angle. He saw none. I saw the recognition click into place, the memory of a name from a 10-year-old file. His expression shifted from confusion to a deep, narcissistic rage. "You," he whispered, a low snarl in his voice. 10 years, Victor. You built your entire career on my back." He set the glass down hard on the table. He started to laugh, a dry, ugly sound. "You were nothing, a bug on my windshield. The world needed a story, and you were the perfect villain. It made me. I built an empire on your back, and you should thank me for it." He stepped closer, his voice rising, full of self-adulation and contempt. "History is written by the winners, you little man, and nobody will ever even remember your name." A sudden, sharp feedback squeal cut through the air. Victor flinched, looking toward the door. Then his own voice, amplified and crystal clear, echoed from the television. "History is written by the winners." The feed switched from the cheering crowd to a split screen showing police reports, doctored evidence, and financial statements, all while his confession played over the ballroom's public address system. The cheering outside the room died instantly, replaced by a confused murmur that grew into a collective gasp of shock. His face collapsed as he understood. On the screen, a file upload progress bar hit 100%. The room's quiet was shattered by a voice screaming into a radio, bleeding through the walls. "Lock down the building. They're still in here." Clara met me at the door, her face pale but determined. We moved fast, away from the chaos and into a bare service corridor. The sounds of panic from the ballroom faded behind us as we ran down the plain concrete hall. We rounded a corner and came to a hard stop. The head of security stood there, his hand on his weapon, blocking our path to a service exit. He stared at us, his professional expression hardening with suspicion. Before he could raise the alarm, Clara stepped forward, her voice pure command. "There's a breach in the north corridor. The governor wants you there now." The guard hesitated, his training warring with the authority in her voice. He looked from her to me, then back again. Finally, he nodded once and sprinted past us down the hall. We didn't wait. We pushed through the door into another corridor, the final exit just 20 feet ahead. 2 more guards blocked it. They weren't moving, their hands were on their weapons, and they were watching us. We were trapped. Weeks later, the air smelled like salt and diesel. Victor Orbis was in custody, his political machine dismantled by a storm of federal indictments. The truth of my case, of Louis Vusso's case, was public knowledge, a footnote in the spectacular collapse of a powerful man. I stood with Clara on a quiet pier at the city's port, watching the slow, heavy movement of the cargo ships in the bay. The Rico Sol persona was gone, burned away in the chaos of that night. I was free, but the future was a vast, empty space. I looked at her, at the quiet strength in her face. "What comes next?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. She just looked out at the water, at the cranes and the ships that represented the life I used to have. Then she turned and took my hand, her fingers lacing with mine. "We build something new.